So for this myth-busting episode, I'd like to go through some minor points that can be found throughout the Thor films, and notably Thor: The Dark World. And of course, it's always a good excuse to give you some in-depth information about Norse lore. As we've seen before, Frigg is Odin's wife. Her name means beloved, loved one. In the Marvel universe, it's hinted at that she's a magician and taught Loki her skills. Interestingly enough, she is a magic weaver, a Volva. She shares most of the characteristics with Freya. Both goddesses are linked to earth and fertility, both own falcon feathers, and both are weavers of seidr. Freya's name means lady. It's linked to the modern German Frau and is more title than a name. She is married to someone called Odr. The word can be linked back to Odin. The suffix in, attached at the end of a word, means the master of. So Odr is inspiration and Odin is the master of inspiration. It's practically the same name. And there's other links. Odr is always wandering the earth, and a kenning for Odin is the wanderer. Freya and Frigg have the same powers and are married to practically the same man. There is also an uncertainty about the day Friday and whether it refers to Freya or to Frigg. What all of this means is that there's a strong probability that they were originally the same goddess, who was then divided into two characters later on. So it's safe to say that what works for Freya also works for Frigg. Freya is the major magic weaver amongst the gods. In one myth, she comes to them under another name, and when they try to burn her, she walks out of the flames unharmed. She is considered a master in the art of seidr. Seidr is generally considered to be a woman's magic, when galdr is male magic. We'll come back to galdr later, but to say a bit more about seidr, it means cord or string, and it refers to the threads of destiny being woven together into one fabric. Someone who manipulates seidr can weave those threads and see them, so they can see the future and the past, and they can change someone's fate for better or worse. Seidr is also associated to healing, bringing good luck, controlling the weather. Although Freya is the main magician, Frigg is also a great sorceress. In the Lokasenna, Freya tells Loki not to mock Frigg, for she knows the threads of destiny. This might be a warning that she can write down a terrible fate for him, if she so chooses. All of this being said, Frigg never teaches Loki the art of seidr. It is Freya who will teach it to Odin. Odin is the only man in the 9 worlds to practice seidr, and Loki will tease him about it, and basically call Odin a girl, because everyone knows that's an insult, right? As I've mentioned before, there was a war between the Aesir and the Vanir, and there's ongoing hostility between the Aesir and the Jotun. But despite anything said in Thor: The Dark World, the people of Asgard have never been at war against the Dark Elves. Actually, it's not very clear if Dark Elves exist as such. Let me explain. Svartalfar or Dokalfar literally means dark elf. The light elves are simply called Alfar, or sometimes Jos Alfar. The problem is, the only author to mention dark elves is Snorri Sturluson, and he writes 2 centuries after Iceland was converted to Christianity. There's no indication that the distinction was used before him. Even worse, dark elves could actually be dwarves. According to Snorri, dark elves live in Svartalfheim. Guess who also lives there? Dwarves. In fantasy literature, people interpreted this as if they were dark elves, the alter ego of the light elves, living in caves. But it seems dark elves and dwarves were used as synonyms by Snorri. To make things more complicated, the only elvish name we know of is also the name of a dwarf. So the dark creatures living underground are probably all the same species, whatever you choose to call them. Odin does have a spear and only one eye. The spear was a gift from the dwarves, and the eye he sacrificed in exchange of knowledge and power. Odin also has his throne, which allows him to see across all the 9 worlds. Despite his wonderful eyesight, and what the films say, Heimdall can't actually do that. So it wouldn't be Thor's friend leering at Jane day and night, it would be his dad. And as the power's linked to the throne, not Odin, it sometimes happens that someone else uses the throne to glance over the world. Frey apparently uses it to check out pretty girls, and that's how he gets to spot his future wife. The throne is called Hilskalf, with Skalf meaning something like steep slope, crag, turret, or more generally something high. Hild means opening, gap, and seems to indicate a wide-ranging view. So the throne's name means something like the high place from which one can see far, the tower from which to view the world. Odin also has 2 ravens, which we sometimes see in the films. They're called Hugin and Munin, and are 2 projections of Odin's mind. They don't have a great reputation. They are supposed to feast on the dead's eyes. Hugin's liquor is a kenning for blood, and Munin's barley means corpses. Although scholars agree that Hugin means fort, There is some debate as to whether munin means memory. It comes from the word mun, which encompasses thought, desire, and emotion. This might make hugin and munin into two synonyms, where they are both an expression of Odin's thoughts. Or it could be interpreted as meaning that hugin is reasonable, logical thought, and munin is desire, emotion, and maybe more uncontrolled thought. In the same way, Odin has two wolves, Freki and Geri. They sit at his feet in the Valhöll. Odin never eats, but throws his food to his wolves. I've sometimes seen them translated as greed and hunger, and I quite like that interpretation. One wolf eats as much as it needs, and the other one will gobble up everything that's thrown at it. But a few animals and a throne aren't all of Odin's attributes. In his hall, you won't find nice, clean tables full of fruit and veg like you do in the films. You certainly won't find gold pillars and gilded floors. The Valhöll is made of shields and spears, with breastplates instead of seats. The mead comes from a goat who gives out alcohol instead of milk. The meat comes from a magical boar that can be brought back to life after having been butchered and eaten. So as you can see, Marvel's portrayal isn't perfectly accurate. The beautiful, clean hall of gold with great empty rooms and Odin standing on his impeccable throne would probably have looked scruffier, grubbier, and altogether more savage, with animals everywhere and items linking back to war on the battlefield placed all around. I hope you enjoyed this third myth-busting episode. I don't think I'll be coming back to the Marvel universe for a while, but of course I'll keep on posting stories and myths from the Viking Age. If you have any questions, I'm all ears.